So sometimes the solutions to our problems are pretty complex, but sometimes they can be really simple. This is the Be a Hero Gaming channel where we talk about all things games and how to be a hero in real life. And that's the case in our lives, that sometimes the solution to our problems is really simple. And that was kind of the case with these miniatures. So the thing that inspired me for this video, or to do this project in the first place, was I bought the Mythwind set from my local game store, and weirdly enough, the main characters from the game came in sundrop paint, or what they call myth drop, and the expansion did not, which I didn't think was a really big deal at first until I was playing with one of my kids, and I said, hey, why don't you be the innkeeper? She's a pretty good character. And he said, hey, how come mine's not painted and the other ones are? And I didn't think it was a big deal for them just to be painted just this shade color, but it turns out it does make a pretty big difference. And you can see here, I'll bring these up a little bit closer here. You can see here that the gray plastic is pretty plain. It also has a glare on it, so it's hard to see the details. And with the shading here, you get a really good idea on kind of the depth of the model, where you don't get that with the gray plastic. And so in learning how to play Tainted Grail, I was wondering, maybe I should just try to mimic this paint job with the Tainted Grail characters. And I thought it would fit perfectly because with Mythwind, your characters are merely placeholders on the board. You put them on the board and they just say you're taking this action. It's not like there's this really epic battle going on between all these characters like a Warhammer game or something like that. They're merely placeholders. And so I thought, maybe that would work perfectly with Tainted Grail as well. So the only problem I had with this is I didn't like how orange it was. I don't know if you can tell that, but there's it's kind of a brown color, but with a slight orange hue to it. And so I started looking through some of my contrast paints and what I could use for that. And I wanted to start off with a dark color here. So I grabbed these two here, Dark Wood and Sand Golem. The Sand Golem is actually really orange, believe it or not. It looks tan here. This is pretty close to what it actually is, but it's actually orange. Let me show you what I mean here. I've got my Warhammer 40K terrain here that I test all my paints on that I'll one day paint. But you can see right here, this is the Sand Golem, which I think is really weird because they show it here as being kind of a tan color, and it looks really orange. Maybe too orange. Again, when you look at the model here, that's a little more orange than I wanted. So I think that's too much. But then the dark wood is this color here, was just a little bit, which is pretty close to the bottle, which again was a little bit too brown for what I wanted. So what I ended up doing was doing a 50-50 mix of the dark wood and the Sand Golem, and came up with this color, which was a little closer. Again, I didn't want it to be quite so orange, but I wanted it to be kind of a dark brown. So that's what I ended up going with on the Tainted Grail models. And here's how it came out. Once I painted that on there, it looked like this. So here's one of the Tainted Grail characters here. This is a white primer that afterwards I just painted that 50-50 mix of Sand Golem and dark wood, and this is how it looks afterwards. Again, it's a little bit shiny, which I didn't really like, and also a little bit stark. And so after I painted this on, I went ahead and dry brushed the models with a desert yellow. And I started using this on my browns because it makes them look a little more rich instead of just using a lighter tan or mixing white with my paint. This gives it a little more of some richness here. So again, here is just the 50-50 mix of dark wood and Sand Golem. And after I dry brushed it, it came out to look like this. So this is the model with the dry brushed desert yellow on it, and it softens up the harshness of the paint, and it also softens, it makes it less of a glare too. So you don't have this big glare on it like you do with just the contrast paint. I did take one model and I did just a little, just a real light dry brush of skeleton bone, which you can see is a little bit lighter than the desert yellow. And I don't know that it made much of a difference. I tried to go really careful because I didn't want it to be too strong. But this model I used the skeleton bone on. Maybe his face is a little bit lighter. I don't know if you can tell with that. It looks almost the same. So anyway, here are the 4 heroes here. I'll show you those. The 4 heroes I painted and dry brushed. Again, with the 50-50 mix of contrast and then the desert yellow dry brush. The bases, I went ahead and put another coat of the 50-50 mix on because the contrast paints don't do very well on a really flat surface. And so I went ahead and put another layer on there. I'll show you what I mean here. The veneers here that I painted, let's see, this one here, again, is just the 50-50 mix. And you can see here, it's kind of light on the base and blotchy. It didn't go on this flat surface very well. And so because of that, I just put one more layer of it on the base just to darken that up a little bit on the base. And then again, you can see here the difference between the 50-50 mix of contrast with and then with the dry brush of the desert yellow. Here's a veneer that's been dry brushed. And so you can see how the dry brush softens it up a little bit. You can still see the dark details. But how does it compare to the real sundrop? Well, let's take a look here. It's pretty close, but it's not quite as orange. Again, I didn't want it to be as orange. I wanted a little bit more of a richer tan color, and that's kind of what I got. But it's pretty close to the sundrop. And again, I don't know if all the sundrops are exactly like Mythwind. I don't know if they'll be exactly the same or if each company does it a little bit differently. But that's how it ended up turning out. And I'm really pleased with it just because I think it's going to add a lot more depth to the game. Again, you can see here the difference between just the 50-50 mix of contrast and here is the desert yellow dry brush. I probably will go back on this one and maybe just touch up just the very highest edges with the skeleton bones to make them stand out a little bit more, to give that a little bit more pop. But that's what I did there. Again, 50-50 mix of sand golem and dark wood on white primer. And then after that, I just did a dry brush of desert yellow. I hope that's helpful. I've seen a couple videos I watched on how to mimic sundrop. Some of them were okay, some of them weren't that great, and some of them were pretty good. And I just kind of got some ideas from those and then just went to my painting table and looked at what paints I had and tried to put together a mix that would look good. If you have any comments or maybe you've tried something with sundrop that's turned out well for you, go ahead and post them in the comments. And again, just remember, these are just placeholders. So for me, just a real simple paint job was going to do the trick on these because I knew all they're going to do is sit on a card and hold my place for when I'm playing the game. And so they don't really need to be painted up for me, but this adds a lot more. You can actually see the face now. You couldn't even really see the face very well before, but now that it's been dry brushed and has some shading in there, you can see the characters' faces, and I think it will look a lot better. Again, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal till my son pointed out that, hey, how come my character's not painted and your guys' ours? Your guys' are painted, and it really does make a big difference. I hope that's helpful. Remember to be heroes out there, and remember the solution to your problems might just be a real simple one. Don't try to think too complicated. Sometimes a simple solution will solve your problems in your life and in your games. You guys take care.